The marketplace was alive with noise and color. Vendors shouted to sell their goods. Alien children ran between stalls, and the air was filled with scents, both sweet and bitter. Lyra walked through the crowd with her hood pulled low, trying not to be noticed. Her steps were light, careful, as if she was avoiding more than just strangers. For her, the market was always a dangerous place. But today, something strange happened. A scent cut through all the others, warm and deep, rich and alive. It was nothing she had smelled before. It wrapped around her senses like a gentle hand. Her heart gave a sudden hard beat. Her breath caught, her skin prickled with heat. She froze in place, not understanding why her body was reacting this way. Slowly, she turned her head, following the source of the scent. And then she saw him, a human, tall and broad-shouldered, standing near the center of the market. His uniform marked him as an off-world guard. A peacekeeper from another star. He was speaking to a merchant, unaware that she was watching him. But the scent his scent was pulling at her like gravity. Each breath she took made her chest feel tighter. Her knees felt weak. It was as if the world had narrowed down to just him. She had learned about this in stories whispered among her people, a dangerous truth, a rare condition. Sometimes an alien's body could respond to a scent so perfectly that it triggered an irreversible change. It was said to happen only once in a lifetime, and it had just happened to her. Her pulse raced. Heat spread through her limbs like fire. She took a step toward him without thinking. Her mind screamed for control. But her body ignored it. The crowd blurred around her. Every sense sharpened except her thoughts, which grew cloudy and confused. She didn't know what would happen. If she reached him, she only knew that she had to. The human turned his head just as she stumbled forward. Her legs gave way before she could fall to the ground. His strong hands caught her. Her heart slammed in her chest. Up close, the scent was even stronger, almost overwhelming. She looked up into his eyes, and for a moment, the noise of the market faded away. His gaze was steady, concerned. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice deep but calm. She couldn't answer. Her throat felt dry, her voice trapped. She managed only a small nod, but it was a lie. She was not all right. Her skin burned where his hands touched her arms. She wanted to pull away, but she also wanted him to hold her tighter. A strange ache began to grow inside her chest. She didn't know how long she could hide what was happening. In her culture, an uncontrolled heat made someone vulnerable. It marked them as easy prey for those with bad intentions, and the market was full of watching eyes. Daniel, she would later learn that was his name, helped her stand. "You look pale," he said. His scent wrapped around her again, making her knees weaken. She shook her head quickly, trying to break free from his grip, but he steadied her. Somewhere behind them, a figure in the crowd lingered. They were watching with an interest that made her stomach twist. Her instincts screamed danger, but she was too distracted by the human to act. The heat in her body pulsed stronger now. Every breath of his scent drove it higher. Her hands trembled. Her vision blurred for a moment. Daniel frowned, his eyes scanning. "The crowd, someone's watching us," he muttered. Lyra's eyes widened. If the wrong person realized what was happening to her, she could be taken away. Her people's biology was re-rand valuable to some. Too valuable, she had to get away. But her legs felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. Daniel shifted his stance, placing himself between her and the stranger in the crowd. "Come on," he said firmly. She hesitated. Trusting a stranger was dangerous, but staying here was worse. With a small nod, she let him guide her through the crowd. Every step closer to him made her heat rise. She didn't know if she was walking toward safety or deeper danger. But as they disappeared into the winding streets, one thought stayed in her mind. She had only taken one breath of his scent, and yet her whole body was already changing. Asterisk, Daniel, led Lyra through the twisting streets away from the busy market. The sound of merchants and customers faded behind them, replaced by the quieter hum of the outer lanes. Lyra's breathing was still fast, her cheeks flushed with an unnatural heat. She kept her head down, her hood shadowing her face. Daniel glanced at her often, concern in his eyes. "You don't look well," he said, his voice calm but firm. She shook her head quickly, afraid to speak. If she explained, he might not believe her, or worse, he might tell others in her world what was happening to her was dangerous knowledge. If someone knew she was in heat triggered by a scent match, they could use it against her. Her hands trembled as she walked. She gripped the edge of her cloak tightly, trying to steady herself, but every time the breeze shifted, it carried his scent toward her. Her pulse spiked each time. She felt her body reacting more strongly with every breath. Daniel noticed the way she stumbled slightly and reached out to steady her. The moment his fingers touched her arm, it was like fire under her skin. She flinched, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sensation. He pulled his hand back slightly. Frowning, "You're burning up," he said softly. She bit her lip, unsure if she could hold back the truth much longer. They passed a small group of alien traders who whispered to each other as they saw Lyra. One of them gave a slow, knowing smile. Lyra's heart dropped. He had recognized the signs. She turned her face away quickly. If more people saw her like this, rumors would spread fast. And when rumors spread, hunters came in her society. Hunters didn't chase animals. They chased people with rare traits. People like her, those who could be sold, bred, or used. Daniel didn't know the rules of her world, but she could already see the danger forming around them. "Where can I take you?" he asked as they reached a quieter road, somewhere safe. She whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel nodded without question. He led her through an alley that cut between tall, faded buildings. The air was cooler here, but the closeness of the walls made his scent even stronger. Her breathing quickened, her legs weak. She gripped his arm without thinking. His muscles tensed slightly under her touch. "Easy," he murmured, steadying her. But every second she spent near him made the heat inside her worse. She didn't know how much longer she could control it. A shadow moved behind them. Daniel noticed it instantly, his hand going to the small weapon at his belt. Lyra's stomach knotted. She could feel eyes on her back. Oh! She turned slightly and saw them, 3 figures stepping into the alley. Their clothes were plain, but their expressions told her everything they knew. One of them called out to her in her own language. Her blood turned cold at the words. Daniel glanced at her, not understanding. "They want me to go with them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not asking." The 3 men walked closer. Daniel stepped forward, his body between Lyra and the strangers. "Keep walking," one of the men said in the common trade language. Daniel didn't move. The man's eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you." "Human," he growled. Daniel's jaw tightened. "It does now," he replied. Lyra's breath caught at his tone, calm but unyielding. One of the men tried to move around him, but Daniel shifted, blocking the path. The alley seemed smaller. Now, the air heavy with tension, the leader of the group smirked. "You don't even know what she is," he said. Daniel's grip on his weapon tightened. "I know enough," he answered. Lyra's heat was pounding through her, making her dizzy. The scent between them felt like a bond, wrapping tighter and tighter. She could feel the danger in the air. If these men took her, she wouldn't come back. Her heart raced with fear, and something else, a strange trust in the human who stood in front of her. One of the men reached into his coat. Daniel moved instantly, his weapon drawn and pointed. "Not a smart move," Daniel said evenly. The man froze, his smirk fading. The leader glared at Daniel for a long moment, then gave a sharp signal. The 3 of them backed away slowly, disappearing into the shadows. Lyra let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her knees weakened, and she would have fallen if Daniel hadn't caught her again. "We need to get you somewhere they can't find you," he said, his voice low. She nodded. Quickly, she didn't care where they went as long as he was there, because somehow, she already knew without him, she wouldn't survive what was coming. The streets grew narrower as Daniel guided Lyra deeper into the city's back alleys. The glow from the market faded behind them, replaced by dim light from broken street lamps. Lyra stayed close, her hood pulled low, her hands gripping the fabric. Tightly, she could still feel the burning heat inside her chest. A steady reminder that time was running out. Every breath of his scent made it worse. But leaving his side was unthinkable now. Daniel kept glancing over his shoulder. He didn't trust the quiet. The city had too many eyes, too many ears, and the men from earlier weren't the kind to give up. He had seen that look before. The look of predators who thought they already owned their prey. Lyra could feel it too. A pressure in the air like storm clouds gathering. The heat in her body mixed with a growing fear. Her kind's heat cycle made them not just attractive, but vulnerable. And anyone who knew that could turn it into a weapon. They turned down another alley, and Daniel slowed in the faint light. He caught movement ahead, shadows separating from the walls. 3 figures stepped into view, the same ones from before, their eyes sharp and cold, going somewhere. The leader asked, his tone mocking. Daniel's hand instinctively went to his weapon. But he knew a fight here could draw attention from the wrong kind of law. Lyra's pulse raced. She understood every word the men whispered to each other. In her language, they were discussing how much she might fetch on the black market. Her stomach twisted. She moved closer to Daniel, almost hiding behind him. One of the men's lips curled into a smirk. "You can't hide her from us, human," he said. Switching to the trade language, Daniel's eyes narrowed. "She's not yours," he replied simply. The alley seemed to shrink as the hunters stepped forward. One of them reached into his coat, and Daniel's grip on his weapon tightened. The leader raised his hand slightly, as if to calm things, but his smile was pure threat. "You don't even know what she is, do you?" The leader said. Daniel didn't answer. He wasn't about to play into whatever game they were running. Lyra's breath quickened if they said too much. Others might hear. Her heat was a secret, one that could change everything if it became known. The hunters moved to block both ends of the alley. Daniel shifted his stance. Keeping his body between them and Lyra, his voice was calm but firm. "Step aside," he said. The leader tilted his head. Studying him, "You must like trouble," the man said slowly. Daniel didn't flinch. He'd faced worse than street thugs before. But the difference now was that someone's life someone he barely knew was in his hands, and for reasons he didn't yet understand. He refused to let her go. Lyra's mind raced. If Daniel got hurt because of her, she would never forgive herself. But the bond forming between them was making it harder to think clearly. Her body wanted to stay close to him, to breathe his scent. Her instincts screamed that he was safety, but logic told her that the longer she stayed, the more danger he would face. The hunters took another step forward. Daniel raised his weapon slightly, his finger steady on the trigger. "I said, step aside." His voice now sharp as steel. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, as if deciding the fight wasn't worth it not yet, the hunters backed away. But the look in their eyes promised they would return. The leader gave a mocking nod before disappearing into the shadows. Daniel kept his weapon up until they were gone. Only then did he turn to Lyra. "Come on," he said quietly. She nodded. Her hands still trembling, they slipped through the back streets until the noise of the city softened again. Daniel found a narrow passageway between 2 tall buildings. Hidden from view, he stopped there, scanning the area before letting her rest. Lyra leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. The heat was still building. relentless. She looked at him, wondering why he had risked himself for her. "You didn't have to help me," she whispered. Daniel gave a faint smile. "I think I did," he replied, and somehow his words made her chest ache even more. From the rooftops above, unseen eyes were still watching. The hunters were not done. They never were. And in the darkness of the city, a silent race had begun, a race to see who would reach the burning alien girl first. The ones who wanted to own her, or the human who had already decided he would protect her, no matter the cost. Daniel didn't speak as he guided Lyra through the winding streets. The city was quieter now, but the silence didn't feel safe. It felt like the pause before something worse. Lyra followed closely, her hood still pulled low. She could feel the pulse of heat in her chest growing faster. Each step beside him made the strange warmth deepen. Every time the wind shifted and brought his scent to her, her legs weakened a little more. Daniel led her to a building at the far edge of the district. It was small, made of dark stone, with a heavy metal door. He unlocked it quickly and motioned for her to go inside. Lyra hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. The streets were empty, but she still felt eyes on her. She stepped in, and the door shut behind them with a solid clang. The inside of the place was plain: a single table, a narrow bed, and a desk. Covered in papers, there were no windows, only a single overhead light that hummed softly. It was warmer here, and the air was filled with his scent. Lyra's pulse jumped. Her heat was already bad enough outside, but in this enclosed space, it pressed against her senses like a heavy blanket. Daniel pulled out a chair for her. "Sit," he said gently. She did, but her hands gripped the edge tightly. Her breathing was quick, her mind fighting to stay clear. He set a glass of water in front of her. "Drink," he said. She lifted it, her fingers brushing his for a second. The spark of contact made her flinch, but she didn't pull away. The heat in her chest spread lower, and she had to focus hard. To steady her hands, Daniel watched her carefully. "You're not sick," he said slowly. "You're something else." Lyra lowered her gaze. She didn't want to tell him. Telling him could mean he'd walk away. But the bond between them was already too strong to ignore. Her people believed that once a scent match happened, hiding it was useless. The body would push toward change. No matter how much the mind resisted, he knelt down beside her chair so he could see her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled before she spoke. "It's you," she whispered. He blinked, confused. "Me?" She nodded. Slowly. "My kind. We can be triggered by a scent. Once in our life, it changes us, makes our bodies prepare for a bond. The heat. It doesn't stop until—" Her voice trailed off, her cheeks burning even hotter. Daniel didn't fully understand, but he caught the weight in her tone. "This scent thinks me," he said softly. She nodded again, unable to meet his eyes. A sound outside made him glance toward the door. He moved to the desk, grabbed a small scanner, and checked the readings. His jaw tightened. "They're searching the area," he said. Lyra's heart leaped into her throat. "They'll smell it on me," she whispered. "They'll know." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then moved toward the small storage closet at the back. Inside was a hidden space barely big enough for two people. He motioned her inside. She hesitated only a second before stepping in. The space was close to close hand when he shut the panel behind them. The darkness was complete. The heat in her body seemed to double in the confined space. She could hear his breathing beside her, feel the steady warmth of his presence. Her fingers curled against her palms as she tried to keep still. Outside, footsteps passed. Low voices murmured. One of them stopped right outside the door. Lyra's heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it. Daniel stayed still, silent as stone. The voices moved away, and the steps faded. Lyra let out a slow, shaking breath. Daniel opened the panel again, guiding her back into the room. "That won't work forever," he said. "They'll come again." She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because someone has to." Her chest tightened not just from the heat, but from something softer. Something she hadn't felt in years. Trust. For now, she was safe inside these walls. But she knew the hunters wouldn't stop, and deep down, she also knew something even more dangerous was happening. Her body wasn't just changing, her heart was too. And it was all because of one human whose scent she could no longer escape. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the old light above them. Lyra sat on the edge of the chair, her hands in her lap, staring at the floor. Daniel leaned against the desk, arms crossed, waiting for her to speak. He could see there was more to her story. Whatever she had told him earlier was only a piece of the truth. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "My people," she began softly, "are different from yours?" Her voice shook slightly. But she kept going. "We live by bonds, by connections formed through scent." Daniel didn't interrupt. He simply watched her. Lyra's eyes flickered to his, then away again. "Once in our life, we meet someone whose scent matches us perfectly. It's rare, very rare." She swallowed hard, her fingers curling when it happens. "It triggers a heat," she continued. "It's not an illness. It's not something we can stop. It's a change." Her cheeks flushed deeper. "Our bodies prepare for union," she said. The last word quiet. Daniel shifted slightly. Not out of discomfort, but because he was beginning to understand the weight of what she was saying. "This change hits permanent?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Once it begins, there is no reversing it." She hesitated before adding, "And it's dangerous." That made him focus even more. "Dangerous? How?" Lyra's gaze was distant now. "In our world, a bonded female is valuable," she said bitterly. "Too valuable. Some are taken, sold, kept." Daniel's jaw tightened. He thought of the men in the alley. "They knew," he said. "Yes." She whispered, "They could smell it on me, even through the crowd." Daniel pushed away from the desk and began to pace slowly. "So if they get their hands on you, they won't let me go," she finished for him. Her voice trembled. But her eyes were steady now. Daniel stopped pacing and faced her fully. "And this all started when you smelled me." Her lips parted, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she gave the smallest nod. Yes, one breath was enough. Silence settled between them. Lyra looked down at her hands. "I tried to resist it," she said. "I thought maybe, if I stayed away, it would fade." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But every moment near you makes it stronger, and every moment apart." Hertz Daniel studied her face. He had seen people in pain before real pain, but this was something different. It was written in her eyes. Her voice, even the way she sat. This was something her body was doing, whether she wanted it or not. "What happens if it keeps going?" he asked. Her answer was soft, but clear. "I will change. My body will finish the bond, whether you choose it or not." Daniel frowned. "Whether the first choose it." She gave a small, sad smile. "My kind doesn't work like yours. Once the scent match begins, the connection is one-sided at first, but over time..." Her voice trailed off again. "It affects the other two," she whispered. "It's already affecting you." Daniel didn't reply to that. He wasn't sure if she was right, but he also couldn't ignore that something about her was pulling at him, something that had nothing to do with logic. She studied him quietly for a moment. "You could leave me now," she said softly. "You'd be safe." "But I wouldn't be." Daniel let out a short breath. "That's not going to happen." Her heart gave a sharp ache at his words. She didn't know why she trusted him so quickly. But deep inside, she already knew if anyone could keep her safe, it was this human. Daniel sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "Then we need a plan," he said. "They won't stop hunting you, so we can't stay here." She nodded slowly. "I know," she whispered, "but leaving the city won't stop them either." He tilted his head. "Then what will?" Lyra hesitated, her hands tightening in her lap. "If the bond is completed." "They will stop," she said. "It will mark me as claimed. Protected." Daniel's brows furrowed. "That sounds a lot like what they want." Her voice was firm. "Now, no, not with you. They can't challenge a bond made by choice, not in my laws." The thought of it hung in the air between them. Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally, he stood and moved to the door. "Checking the street outside, it's quiet," he said. But both of them knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Lyra rose to her feet, her body still burning. Every breath of his scent reminded her that her time was running out, and though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew the truth. Their connection was no longer just a problem to solve. It was becoming something neither of them could walk away from. The night outside was still, but Daniel's instincts told him it was only pretending to be calm. He had been in too many tense situations to mistake quiet for safety. Lyra sat near the table, her hands gripping the edge. Her eyes fixed on the door. She could feel the shift in the air. It was thicker, heavier. As if danger was pressing against the walls, Daniel moved around the small room. Checking his gear, he had his sidearm, a combat knife, and a short-range communicator. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He glanced at Lyra. She looked pale despite the flush in her cheeks from the heat. "You should stay in the back," he told her. Lyra shook her head quickly. "If they break in, there's nowhere to run," she whispered. He didn't argue she was right. A faint sound reached his ears. Boots on stone, slow and deliberate. Daniel turned toward the door, his hand already moving to his weapon. Lyra's breath caught, her body tense. The steps stopped just outside. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked softly. Daniel's muscles tightened. Someone was picking it. The door swung open fast. 3 figures rushed inside, their movements sharp and aggressive. Daniel fired once, forcing them to scatter. Lyra ducked behind the table, her heart pounding. The attackers weren't random. They were the same hunters from before. Their leader stepped in last, his smirk unchanged. "Evening," he said coldly. Daniel didn't reply. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between them and Lyra. One of the hunters lunged. Daniel met him head-on, blocking the strike and slamming him into the wall. The second moved to flank him, but Lyra grabbed a heavy metal cup from the table and hurled it. It struck the man's arm, throwing off his aim. Daniel took the chance to disarm him, the blade clattering to the floor. The leader watched, not joining the fight. Instead, his eyes stayed on Lyra. "Come with me, and he lives," he said, his tone almost casual. Lyra's stomach twisted. She shook her head. "I'm not yours," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The leader sighed. "Then we'll take you over his body," he said, and gave a sharp signal. 2 more men burst through the doorway. Daniel's mind raced. They had to get out now. He grabbed Lyra's hand. Pulling her toward the back of the room, the attackers surged forward. Daniel fired again, hitting one in the leg. The man went down with a shout, but the others kept coming. Daniel shoved open the back panel that led to the storage closet. "This way," he ordered. Lyra climbed in first, her body pressed against the narrow space. Daniel followed, slamming. The panel shut behind them. The darkness wrapped around them. They could hear the hunters tearing through the main room, footsteps, curses. The sound of furniture crashing. Lyra's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Daniel kept his arm around her, his body tense. He was listening, counting the steps, mapping. Their positions in his mind, the panel rattled suddenly. Someone had found it. Daniel drew his knife silently. The panel shifted. A sliver of light cutting into the darkness before it could open fully. Daniel pushed hard, knocking the attacker backward. He burst out into the main room. Forcing the fight into close quarters, Lyra stumbled after him. Staying low, Daniel moved with precision, using the narrow space to his advantage. One hunter went down, clutching his side, another back toward the door. Shouting for reinforcements, the leader finally moved. Stepping in close with a blade in hand, Daniel blocked the strike. The two of them locked in a tight struggle. The man was fast, but Daniel was stronger, with a sharp twist. He knocked the weapon free and sent the leader staggering. "Get her!" The leader roared. Two men tried, but Lyra ducked behind the overturned table. Daniel reached her, pulling her toward the door. They couldn't win this fight. Not here, not tonight. They burst into the street. The cold night air hitting them like a slap. Daniel didn't stop moving. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their boots pounding after them. Lyra's chest burned from running. The heat inside her made every step harder, but she didn't let go of his hand. The city blurred past as they sprinted through alley after alley. Daniel's grip was strong, steady, refusing to let her fall. Finally, they ducked into a narrow gap between two warehouses. Daniel pressed her against the wall, motioning for silence. The hunter's footsteps thundered past. They waited until the sound faded. Only then did Daniel let out a slow breath. Lyra looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "They won't stop." His eyes met hers, calm but unyielding. "Then neither will I." The night air was cold, but Lyra's skin still burned. Her breathing was quick, each inhale dragging Daniel's scent deeper into her. They had stopped in a small abandoned storehouse at the city's edge. The place smelled of dust and old wood. But his scent still cut through it, sharp and warm. Daniel had barred the door with a heavy beam and now moved to check the windows. Lyra sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, her knees drawn up, her body trembled. Not from fear, but from the change reaching its peak. She could feel it now. Something deep inside was shifting. Her senses were sharper, her pulse faster. Every sound was louder, every touch more intense. Her people had warned of this, but no one had ever described it completely. It wasn't just heat. It was an unshakable pull. The bond was almost complete, and nothing could stop it now. Daniel crouched in front of her. "You're getting worse," he said quietly. Lyra met his eyes, her own shining faintly in the dim light. "It's not worse," she whispered. "It's ending." He frowned. "Not understanding the change," she explained softly. "When it finishes, I'll never be the same again." He didn't speak for a moment. Instead, he studied her face. She looked both fragile and unyielding. Her cheeks were flushed, her lips trembling slightly. "What happens when it ends?" he asked finally. Lyra's gaze dropped to her hands. "I will be bonded to you," she said. "It means no one else can claim me. Not by law, not by force." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So that's why they wanted you before it happened." "Yes," she whispered. "Once it's done, their chance is gone forever." A sound outside cut their talk short. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Daniel stood instantly, moving to the door. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice called out, "You can't run forever, human." It was the leader of the hunters, his tone mocking but edged with frustration. Daniel didn't answer. He motioned for Lyra to stay back. The door rattled, then shook harder as they tried to force it. The beam held, but not for long. Daniel drew his weapon, his body tense. The wood splintered under the pressure. With a loud crack, the door burst open and the hunters flooded in. Daniel fired, dropping the first man who rushed him. Lyra's heart pounded. Her body screamed for her to move, to run. But something deeper told her to stay close to him. The leader came in last, his blade drawn. His eyes locked on Lyra instantly. "She's mine," he snarled. "No," Daniel said simply. The leader lunged. Daniel met him head-on. Their weapons clashing in the dim light. The fight was fast and brutal. Daniel blocked a slash, countered with a strike to the man's ribs, but the leader was strong, driven by greed and rage. One of the other hunters moved toward Lyra. She grabbed a broken piece of wood from the floor and swung it with all her strength. It hit his arm, forcing him back. Her heart raced not just from fear, but from something else. She could feel the final wave of the change building inside her. Her vision sharpened, her breath slowed. The world narrowed to the sound of Daniel's heartbeat. Steady even in the fight, the leader made a hard swing. But Daniel twisted aside, driving his shoulder into the man's chest. They crashed to the floor, the knife skidding away. Daniel pinned him, his arm pressing against the man's throat. "This ends now," Daniel said. His voice low and certain. The leader struggled, then went still as the pressure increased. When Daniel finally let go, the man gasped for breath but didn't rise again. The other hunters saw their leader fall and fled into the night. Silence filled the storehouse. Daniel turned toward Lyra. She was standing now, her body trembling, her eyes glowing faintly. "It's done," she whispered. He frowned. "What is?" "The change," she said softly. "It's complete." She stepped closer, her movements slow but sure. Her hand reached for his, and when their fingers touched, a warm rush spread through her body. It was different now, no longer painful, no longer overwhelming. It was steady, like the deep warmth of a fire that would never go out. Her bond was sealed. No one could take her from him now. Not by force, not by law, not by any claim. Daniel looked down at her hand in his. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wasn't letting her go. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest smile. "You saved me," she said, her voice quiet but full of meaning. Daniel shook his head slightly. "Maybe," he replied, "but I think you're the one who's going to change me." Outside, the night stretched, silent and still. But inside that storehouse, something had begun that would not end. A bond stronger than law, stronger than fear. A connection sealed by one breath of scent and a fight neither of them would forget.